Okay, so I'm only waiting for the recording. Okay, so people, welcome to the EFB Consultancy space. Well, first of all, we're appreciating that you attend this space. I hope this call will be useful for you. And well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Leonardo Hurtado. You can call me Leo. Currently, I'm team leader of knowledge management at the Global Finance Board, and also project manager of the EFB piloting implementation for this year. And well, today we are here because we are opening the application processes for entities that wants to join to be part of the piloting project inside GFB related to the EFB implementation. Today we have this agenda. So first of all, I want to explain more about the context, how EFB born as part of this global implementation. Then we have an explanation about the organizational structure, the roles and functions inside EFB, then some project implementation report or some processes related to the semester, and then which are the plans for the next semester, the semester that we are open the applications. Then we have two EFE testimonials with Julia and Ray, MCVP Finance of Ukraine and Pakistan. Then some recommendations or suggestions before applying. And the last part, it's about the Q&A. So let's talk about the context. So during 2020, GFB and AI defined and established better the main differences between these bodies related to the finances, tasks, activities, and responsibilities. So a few years ago, there is a mix or some situations that AGI and GFE did by twice or some repeated or inconsistency activities. So for 2020, they defined as GFB as the technical body and AI as the strategical network management responsible. So as you can see it, during this year, they define GFB as the financial processes responsible, focus on technicalities, routine and consistency, instead of AI was focused on financial sustainability, governance, growth, and synergy. In terms of the past finance standards, basically legality and risk management was it's a synergy between each other. But GFB was focused in the technical side, maybe the data consolidation, creation of tools, and then AI was focused on the analysis or strategical side, how they can take decisions around the data that GFB collect. Then in terms of implementation or tracking, GFB tracks the accounting, reporting, auditing standards, following the GFB service. Then AI was focused in the HR sustainability. So this is why AI now it's handled the network management of MCVP's finance. In terms of budgeting, basically GFB has to work on the processes and control, basically create a tool, how this works better in terms of analysis, but the planning, the frameworks, the decision making in terms of management, it's under AI. And for the rest activities or the rest of the responsibilities, you can see it. AI, it's focused on strategies and GFB in terms of analysis. So as you can see it, basically GFB is a technical financial data body, and then AI is it's part of the strategies side. Take that in consideration. We are also analyze the current state of the network, different issues that the entities are facing. As you can see it, as you know, we face different situations. As global network, we increase the number of entities in depth. Also, we have the COVID-19 pandemic. The leadership pipeline finance, it's reduced every year, etc. But focused in the technical side of finance, we asked us as GFB, why financial analysis is important in AIESEC. Basically to ensure this sustainable growth in the organization, see the different strengths and weaknesses that we have, and how we can take better decisions. Our main challenges, basically the financial processes implementation, and also we have the strategy and sustainability, leadership pipeline, as I mentioned it. So we have different situations inside finances, and well, in the next slides, you will see the current situation on different bodies. But basically, these three, it's something very common across the global network, and how we visualize the future of finance in AIESEC. Basically, we can see that maintain the same dynamic as last year's. Will get AIESEC to in a critical situation because of the poor financial management across the network and different issues with some functions. And basically we find, or we see it, different ways to improve this kind of situations, to facilitate our resources to improve the sustainability and different network implementation. And we aspire to AIESEC continue growing and improve internal financial processes to be to keep this transparency and also this sustainability in the middle and long term. So then we assess the different roles that get involved in finances. As I mentioned it, related to GFB, AIESEC International Regional Offices. We have the intertwined the responsibilities related to network management, because we have coaching inside GFB, but also we have regional managers or with kind of finance responsibilities. Also, we have the AA finance manager. So in terms of network management with the MCP finance, we have some kind of issues. So the idea is to make this more consistency, and this is why we split the differences between AI and arrows, focus on strategies, and then GFB only in the technical side. This is why in 2021, GFB don't continue with the coaching system, and then all the network management pass to AI. In terms of finance responsibles as MCVP's finance, we see we have a lot of responsibilities, basically only in one person per entity, because we understand there is some entities having MC finance manager, etc., but most of the entities, the main responsibilities, it's under the MCP finance. So we have a technical heavy roles, are time consuming, and there is a lot of things that you need to handle between processes and management. So if you focus on the technical side, maybe you don't have enough time to work on the strategies or network management. Also, the MC finance pipeline. The MCB finance pipeline tend to come from low to zero finance background applicants. Basically, we have less people with finance background applying to positions, or basically the MCP select MCP's finance not because they apply to the position, because they see some strange or some qualities, but the talent capacity it's lower. In terms of ESTs, the ESTs knowledge management tends to be in short terms, or they need better basis. ESTs finance usually covers the technical and also a strategic side. That depends on different structures. And also under ECBs, we saw some ECBs are conducting finance and legal audits in multiple functions, and not only exchange activities. So this is something also important, because ECB, it's if you go to the compendium or the management that ICB, it's done scaling. All the content, it's only focused on exchange activities or quality assurance of these things. And financial legal activities, it's something that some entities are doing inside ECBs, but it's not the focus of or the purpose of ECBs. And also in terms of internal auditor, there is not a standard defined in terms of the JD, and basically each entity implementing internal auditor has their own vision or their own definition of what internal auditor means. So then on September of 2020, we had an internal summit inside the GFB to define the ideas of EFB, because we visualized the implementation, but we needed to define the value proposition of this body. So we follow the golden circle framework, basically to define the why, which means the purpose, how the processes, and what the results. Basically, maybe you have some idea of these things, because AIESEC also follows the golden circle theory. And then the why of EFB, it's basically a body that supports the financial processes of the entities to provide a consistent and accurate information to make AIESEC finances more sustainable and efficient throughout the global network. You can see it, some keywords that you can take off the why. It's consistency, accuracy, and efficiency. The how, basically, to get and separation between relative functions between EFB and MCs. So as you can see at a global level, we have EFB and we have AI. We visualize to get something similar and entities level. So we have the EFB as the body related to the technical side of financial processes, and then the MCs can get focused on strategies and sustainability and network management. So basically, it's kind of the same dynamic, but at national levels. And about the what, basically, they facilitate the improvement of financial processes. They have some activities or some synergies with the LCs, improve the transparency across the entity, more related with financial legal audits, data controlling, reporting, and also then with these better systems, the MCs can take better decisions and be more accountable between the different stakeholders. Then we have the part of the organizational structure. So basically, this is the main. We have other bodies, but this is the main bodies that we have to visualize the example of how EFB will looks like. So, so in the current global structure, the finance processes, data management, etc., at MC or national level, it's inside the MC and more directly through the MCVP's finance. So there is a lot of things or a lot of responsibilities inside the one body. But if you see it at the global level, as I mentioned, you have AIE and you have GFB. So basically, as I mentioned it, at an international level, AIE handle the strategies and EFB the technical side. So basically, the proposal is that to have a separate and independent body that can support the entities in the technical side of finance, and then the MCs can get focused in the strategies. So as you can see it, there is something parallelism that you can see it because we have, in terms of exchanges, ICB, and then each entity has their own ECBs. So basically, the MC don't get the responsibilities of case solving and operational audits, etc. This is why we have the ECBs. As you can see it, there is more efficient in terms of quality insurance of exchanges. But right now, we don't have something similar at finance status. So this is basically the proposal. And then with EFB, we have completed the 3 pillars of the global organizational structure. As I mentioned, we have the control boards in charge of all of things related with controlling and the good implementation of exchanges. Then we have AIE regional offices, MCs and LCs focus on strategies, governance, and also there is the operational bodies because LCs deliver the exchanges or the new products, and MCs, ROs, and AI create the strategies, etc. And then we have the completed the pillar of financial processes and technical accountability at global level by GFB, at national level by EFBs. Then we have the roles and functions. So the definition of EFB is that EFB it's an independent body as ECBs does, and support the MCs analysis in the institutionalization of financial processes and training more and better financials across the national networks. The key responsibilities are data controlling, consolidation and reporting, the technical support in accounting, audits and compliance of finance, legal and policies, risk assessment and management support to the MCs, and the pricing assessment and analysis. In the next slides, I will explain more about the different functions because there is something that could change, depends there on each realities. And the how, basically, as I mentioned it, EFB allows this separation between EFB and member committees, and the EFB supports the LCs through the financial processes. Then in terms of a structure, based on the different functions, we define 4 areas or 4 departments. And there is something with the microphone open. Okay. Nisa from Tunisia, you're up with the open microphone. Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, there is 4 functions. The data management in charge of data collection, the report of the data, basically something similar that GFB does with the GFB service. And then we create the dashboards that you can see the implementation of finance processes, the ratios, sustainability levels, etc. Also, there is the audits division, as the name says, basically assess the correct implementation of financial and legal processes. Then we have the risk and research division, basically focus on risk assessment, pricing assessment, any kind of other research that the entity needs to improve some networks. And then there is the accounting support in case you are facing some situations related with to accounting systems implementation, improve the accounting process inside your entity. There is this division. So now basically this is how it looks like the most bigger and specialized structure leading the 4 departments. But and this is the disclaimer, each entity could define which departments fits better with their realities. So right now in the piloting, we have entities running the 4 divisions. We have entities running only audits and accounting or data management and audits, etc. But the minimum that we require for the EFB establishment is have the EFB chair and work at least one of these departments. Will be separately. So you have the chair and a division with the team members, or maybe you have the chair focus on only one division. There is something that could work, depends on your talent capacity, the size of your entities, if you have a lot of LCs or not, this kind of variables could work in terms of to define the final structure of your EFBs. But something that I want to explain also is to consider that EFB doesn't handle the network management of LCBP's finance. So this is why we don't have any kind of knowledge management or coaching responsibilities inside EFB structure, because this is something as part of the responsibilities of the MCs. So just to take that in consideration. And basically how the workflow and accountability system works between GFE, EFE, MCs, and ESTs. So I will start with the first disclaimer, and basically there is something related with to MCs. So MCs are still responsible to fill the GFB monthly survey. Why? Because this is a membership, global membership criteria, and it's part of the governance responsibilities. So as we mentioned, MCs, it's the responsible of the governance staff. And this is something that we can delegate to EFB. EFB can support the data collection because data collection is part of the responsibilities of EFB, but they are not the responsibles to fill the global membership criteria. Then related to GFB, GFB works as the umbrella body, just like ICB does with ECBs, to provide different knowledge services, education, for development, etc. And why we still having inside GFB the knowledge management division? Because this division passed from network management to NCBP's finance to for development for EFBs. So the GFB division of knowledge management, it's more focused now on EFBs. And then, as you can see it, EFB, it's accountable to GFB, works in synergy with MCs and ESTs, if this situation applies in terms of ESTs. Also, EFB needs to report the progress to the MCs. So there is an accountability system. Independent body doesn't mean that they work separately at all. Then they still have accountability systems between MC and EFBs. There is something the decision making related to the MCs. And basically the function of EFB is to collect and analyze the LC's data, works with other functions alongside the LCs and MC. As I mentioned it, EFB can coordinate with the MC how to use and find the benefits of these functions to follow the best way or the best things that works for the entity. And also, EFB must share the collected data with the MCs and EFB. This is something related to accountability and transparency with the MCs, because the MCs needs this data to take the decisions making, and to EFB it's for in terms of accountability. Also, the LCs provides this financial data and other items needed to EFB. As I mentioned it, this data is necessary for some processes. And with the ESDs, there is the same situation or the same status as we have. MCs lead the ESDs to track activities and provide them standards. And now, if you have some ESDs with some technical skills, maybe these JDs will pass to EFB, and ESDs still continue as part of your strategic activities. Maybe you don't scale a coaching framework to LCVP's finance through ESDs, educational content, team standards, etc. This kind of capacity buildings could works inside ESDs. So EFB gets focused only on the technical side and can have some synergies with ESDs in terms of educational content, etc. Then I will pass for the implementation during the semester. So why we are doing the piloting project, and the first generation of EFBs was the 2021.1 semester. And we implementing this project to ensure the effective implementation of the new board in all the entities. We want to present good reports to the global network and see how feasible it's this EFB implementation at global implementation. So we review this implementation with few entities. Right now we have 11 entities implementing EFB as part of the piloting project. We are aware of some other entities have EFBs or something similar, and this is fine. But in the piloting project, now we have only 11 to tracking and have this accountability system. So this is how last semester's looks. And basically in October 2020, we launched the output of the EFB basis. Then we started piloting on November, launching the selection processes for entities, the selection processes for chairs and team members. Between December, January, and February was the onboarding and preparation phase. And then between February to May, there is the implementation phase, implementing coaching, tracking, having board development routines like EFB global calls, we deliver a summit, etc. And then for the next semester, we prepare the report to be present on IC about the current implementation of EFB. Then there is a screenshot of the EFB tracker. So as you can see it, we have different entities. We had 3 entities per region, and then we have some disbanded because talent management, but at the final of the semester, we have 11 entities. As you can see it, there is each entity has defined their own divisions inside the proposal of EFE. For example, one entity has data management and risk and research. Other one has the 4 divisions. Then we track the selection processes of if they have selected team, the chair, the team members. Also, we launched the EFB Academy, so we track the progress and the test scores. We share some tests to evaluate the knowledge of the EFB chairs. Also, we have the planning, if they launch the output, when the dates, etc. And the entity diagnosis, if they upload it and review it by the EFB bodies. We have kind of coaches on-site GFB to have the accountability routine with the EFB chairs. And then I will explain the plans of EFB for the semester and the second phase of the piloting project. So there is a semester between June to December. So right now on June, we have the selection processes for entities, also the selection process for new chairs. Some entities implementing GFB already launched and select the chair, which is perfect. Also the selection processes for team members, the reporting preparation for international legislation meeting. And then between June and first days of August is the onboarding and preparation of business as usual. Business as usual means the things that you do as routine in your work. Then between August to November is the implementation step, basically the business as usual implementation. We plan to have the second EFB summit for the global network on September. And then between November and December, there is the second EFB project report for the IPM 2022. And this is basically how it looks like at general. After the GFB planning on the second week of June, GFB kind of scale with more details the plan, but basically this is a general timeline that you can see it and the general plans. Then for the next semester, basically GFB it's working to present there and have the recognition of EFB at in global compendium as ECB and ICB has their recognition, and EFB has the recognition of as a global part of the global structure in the global compendium. Now, right now, we only expect to have the recognition and the definition of EFB. Maybe more details of how it functions, more specific. Maybe this is something that we can prepare for IPM 2022. And for this piloting, we expect to have minimum 10 entities per region piloting EFB. Could be more. There is some depending the applicants, but we expect to increase to 40 entities by the next semester, and also have more alignments to the AIESEC 2025 vision. During this year, GFB aligned better their workflow to AIESEC 2025 vision, and then the next step is to have more clear how EFB works and being part of this 2025 vision in terms of the financial long-lasting vision. Now we have the EFB testimonials. So we have two guests, Julia from Ukraine and Rai for Pakistan. So Julia, this is your space.
All right, so hello everybody. So I'm here to share some few words about our EFB because we're going to have the second semester EFB soon. And now I would like to start with the period when I was elected MCVP, and I received an EST from my predecessor who was working with me for 2 more months. And one of the members of EST mentioned that Turkey has national finance body, like National Finance Board, and I got excited about this idea of having a separate body for finance. And I was planning to implement this kind of body in Ukraine. And coincidentally, GFB decided to launch this EFB piloting project in November. So I didn't hesitate to take part in it and click. You can see the picture of my first EST from predecessor, and the arrow indicates the girl who mentioned the idea. So starting from July, I guess I was thinking about such project. Click. And we received a GFB letter mentioning that piloting projects are launched. So this is how it looked. And yeah, so that's how it all started for all of the entities who are piloting now. Click. Yeah, so can I ask you, Leo, to hide the video panel because it's in black box for viewers? Okay, perfect. So we started the process. So we had some preparational calls, of course, with GFB. And then in the end of December, we selected the first ever chair of EFB for AIESEC in Ukraine. And in January, we had the full team onboarded and the strategy planned. So you can see the structure of EFB in their Instagram. You can see that Vika was the EFB chair. She was LCVP Finance and Legal in LC Kyiv, who was actually one of the best in commission. And she had 5 members. So the positions are kind of weird. I can explain them. So managers are higher positions, coordinators are lower. So they had 2 managers, Audit and DTRM, Data Tools and Risk Management Manager. And then Beyzanur from Turkey, she was responsible for BAR, BAR, which is not for drinking, but for budgeting, accounting, and reporting. So, and Sofia is from Russia. So we had kind of international team there. And then 3 coordinators were internal. Vlad, Lisa, and Natalia. So Lisa and Natalia were elected LCVPs, and Vlad was current LCVP from operations. So from February till May, we were piloting this project, and in May we decided to launch the chair application for the next position of chair. So we have a newly selected chair right now. That's Sofia, who was audit and DTRM manager. And now we are selecting the second team of EFB. So it's kind of on. By the way, the second round was closed yesterday. Click. So I want to mention that together with the first EFB chair, Vika Muzika, we analyzed the main bottlenecks we had in finances of AIESEC in Ukraine, and it helped her to create the strategies for EFB. But I would like to mention that it was done before the team was selected. So it's recommended for you to give some inputs for those strategies. Yeah, so you can see the strategies, budgeting, accounting, reporting level up, because we had gaps in there a lot. We didn't know if the data LC submitted was accurate. Then audit upgrade as well. We had an established system, but it had to be reviewed. And then tools for financiers are everything. So you always have some issues with tools. Yes, click. And click. So I have some slides connected to results from the piloting. Yeah, and the first one is First of all, MCVP, as MCVP, I had more time for commission management and strategist fulfillment, because the point was I was managing ELSE's reporting, I was managing auditing every 3 months. And it meant, for example, that the first week of each month I was off because I was checking ELSE's reporting. And then when it comes to auditing, it was conducted for the whole month. So again, I was off. And then I was managing conferences from time to time. So when it came to strategies, I reminded about them, and I didn't have that much time for that. So my priority was commission management and then strategies. And the first priority was business as usual. So I had much more time for that in my second semester. Then commission itself has more opportunities to get better professional experience in finance, and at the same time improve the corner. So they don't only work as LCVPs, but also on national level. So it's always a better way to use them, to kind of utilize them for the better of the corner. Click. Yes, of course, literacy and HR capacity improvement for sure. We have members in finance which are coordinators. So if coordinators are accepted in such a body, they will be perfect for LCVPs. If LCVPs are accepted, then they will be perfect for MCVPs. So you know that you have to invest in terms of educations into your commission, because this department is kind of more professional, unlike others. So we have limited HR for that, and we have to work with it more. Click. Yes, so since there was a whole body responsible for reporting, for risk management, for auditing, everything they were doing was a better quality because more people were doing the job. For example, when it comes to auditing, more people were responsible for auditing, not only me. So the audit went more smoothly. The same about ELSE's reporting. The data was much more accurate. Click. Yes, then of course you receive more resources for innovations and gaps determining. So those people who work in EFB, they see the bottlenecks and they have time to actually improve them. And I don't know if the last point is available, or yes, culture promotion, of course. You have a separate professional independent financial body, which sounds really cool. Yeah, and it of course affects the culture and how the corner is perceived by others. Click. Yes, learnings from piloting. So the first one, you have to make sure that you have HR capacity that is ready for EFB implementation. The idea to make this body very nice, it's perfect. But if you don't have people who are interested in such a project, it will be kind of harder to, push them to apply. So you should, before launching, you should consider what people would be interested and talk with them in advance, and kind of prepare them. And that's how it works. You have to ensure pipeline way more in advance than launching the applications. Click. USMCVP will have to support the first EFB during the whole time. So if you think that you will downscale everything a lot onto EFB and chill, then sorry, but not this time. If you want it to work and to be consistent, you have to invest your time. So I supported EFB a lot. Click. Again, you as MCVP will have to make sure that the project will be alive after the first term. So I was very concerned about having the second EFB term after the first first attempt, but so far so good. So I also, approached commission myself to make sure that they will apply, and they did. Okay, click. Yes, an interesting point I think worth mentioning is that do use GFB support, but do not wait for a Z detailed instruction how to do everything from them. Why? Because EFB implementation success is only in your hands. And since the piloting entities, there will be more of them, like a lot of them, several, and they have all different realities. GFB won't be physically able to like fully guide you. So you have to be proactive enough to like guide this piloting project. Because I know that those who waited for GFB to make everything instead of them, they didn't manage to like not finish, but to proceed with the actually, I will change the word, to proceed with the piloting project that well. Click. And also do not forget about the team experience delivery in EFB team. Those members are like national support teams, so they need to be engaged to work well. Click. And of course, no fuck ups, no learnings. And the first one is that it's better to have your internal HR like as a main pipeline, because they know the reality better. They know how tools work and everything. So you will not have to onboard them about it that much. Click. And you prepare them for higher positions at the same time. So you invest. We had 2 foreigners, one of which actually quit, and another one was non-financial. So he also eventually quit, unfortunately. So we had some HR like issues on the go. Click. Also, EFB didn't have a lot of touch points with commission. You should consider that. So commission didn't know very much about what EFB was doing. Only chair was communicating. And that was the gap that we will try to solve during the next EFB term. Click. Also about showcasing. In order for people to know about you, you need to actually showcase yourself. So it's crucial for pipeline and for promotion of EFB. So also try to consider that. And I guess the last one. Yeah, delegation issues within the EFB. It's also crucial for team experience when it comes to, team leaders delegating some tasks to members or not delegating enough tasks. Members are getting bored, they are not engaged, and they perform less. So I guess it's an issue of any team. So just a reminder to keep an eye on that. And I think that it's all from me. The last click one more time. The last actually slide is if you have some questions, you can contact me or the chair or the new chair. We will be happy to share with what we learned from those few months of piloting. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julia. Thanks for sharing your experience handle EFE. And the next testimonial is from Rai from EF in Pakistan. So Rai, are you here?
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. So hello, everyone. I'm Ras Sardar. I'm Member Committee Vice President, Finance for AIESEC in Pakistan. And yeah, Julia covered a lot of things. And let's talk about Pakistan now. So if we talk about entity finance board, so first of all, I would just like to just share the challenges that I was facing when I came into the office, and the challenges and the realities of my entity. So let's start off with the first one. So number one, the main issue that I was facing when I came into the office was regarding accounting. So the LCs, like if I am to explain the accounting procedures of my LCs, so like consider it in a way that 4 of my LCs were going in north direction, 2 were in south, 3 were in west, and 3 were in the east. So everyone was following their own rules and their own ways of accounting, which was kind of very tough for me to see that what kind of accounting every LC is doing, and to make sure that all accounting methods of every LC are proper or not. So this was a very big issue for me, as I was the sole person who was managing the finance network in my LC. So this was one of the big issue already that I was facing. Number two, no awareness regarding chart of accounts. So I remember that when I came into the office and we used to talk about which chart of account should be used for which cost or which revenue. So instead of having the knowledge of the right chart of accounts, LCs were just, they just know that this chart of account was used for this purpose, but they didn't know the context or reasoning behind why we were using this specific chart of account for this purpose. Due to this, the analysis that we used to make was kind of very inaccurate, because if one LC is using a different chart of account for same thing, that means that the results or the analysis that I'm getting, it's inaccurate as well. Number three, audit checks. So until last year, AIESEC in Pakistan was very poor in terms of auditing. So our auditing procedures weren't well defined. LC's audit and check and balance, their proofs weren't checked thoroughly, because we didn't have a proper team, or we don't have mechanisms in place to make sure that LCs are doing LC's audits are being done properly. So this was a big issue, because if you aren't checking audits, having audit check for your LCs, then there's a big chance that a financial discrepancy can happen. And one such case arose last year just because of the issues that we weren't having any audit checks. Next, LCs weren't arriving their financial reports digitally. So one of the most important things in reporting is making sure that all of your records, your reports, your financial proofs, they all are being recorded digitally, because having a physical record, it's good, but in the environment that we are working nowadays, a digital archive is very important, because in case your physical documentation gets lost, you have a backup for all of those documents. And unfortunately, AIESEC in Pakistan wasn't doing very well when it comes to digital archiving of our reports and our documents. Next, weak education cycles and lack of financial awareness in the network. So there wasn't a lot of emphasis in terms of finance. Like, people weren't aware of the finance department, finance routines. They didn't know the value and importance of finance, that how important are financial routines, how important are these audit checks, accounting checks, how important is reporting. So this was a big challenge for us as a new MCT. Next. And yes, very tough routine for MCVP to manage everything, as Julia mentioned as well. As an MCVP, if you're trying to manage all of these things, then you wouldn't get a chance to innovate, to strategize, to develop new routines, because this is such a lot of work, that it consumes a lot of time on daily basis just to make sure that LCs are doing everything properly, and they are following all existing protocols and meeting the deadlines. So it is a big hassle for an MCVP. Next. And now I would talk about how we changed things after EFB came into existence in Pakistan. Number one, so we had a specific team in form of Entity Finance Board, where we had 6 members. We were focusing on 2 main departments. Number one was auditing, second was accounting. So when I knew that I have a team which can check accounting routines on monthly basis, we devised specific protocols, defined protocols for all the LCs of how to conduct audit checks, just to make sure that every LC finances are transparent, no financial discrepancy is happening. And this was happened just because of EFB piloting, because then we had a specific team which was focusing on how to conduct proper, on just making sure that all LCs are adhering to the audit protocols and are following the deadline, protocols or guidelines that we have implemented and created for our audit checks. Number second, bi-weekly accounting checks for LCs. So consider me doing everything for all of these LCs, and now consider a specific board having 3 specific members whose task is to make sure that all accounting routines are being followed, your accounting softwares are being updated on bi-monthly basis to make sure that there aren't any errors or there aren't any mistakes that the LCs are making. So we ensure twice in 1 month that the accounting that the LCs are doing, is that correct or not? Because if your accounting is not proper, that means your auditing, your reporting, your other finance standards that come after accounting, they aren't being followed as well. They are inaccurate as well. So this is why we have laid a lot of focus on accounting through Entity Finance Board. Next. Digital archiving of reports and financial proofs. So it is responsibility of Entity Finance Board as well to make sure that all records are being stored online. We are having all financial proofs being stored online as well. All documents are being stored and archived as well to make sure that in case in future, if we need any kind of document, any bank statement, any financial proof, it is easily accessible for us instead of contacting that LC or instead of trying to find that thing through physical documentation. So this is something where EFB has played a very important role when it's come to Entity Finance Board implementation in Pakistan. Next. Monthly consultancy spaces with VPs. So this is something that we do on monthly basis as well. So there are a lot of issues that LCVPs like do encounter every month. So we have special consultancy spaces with every vice president. The EFB team conducts these spaces where they talk with the specific LCVP, try to understand the issues that they are facing, try to facilitate them in terms of their accounting, in terms of their financial management. And apart from that, we are also delivering educational spaces with EFB to make sure that LCs are being educated in terms of financial standards, in terms of correct implementation of accounting and auditing standards. And lastly, as an MCVP, now I can focus on other things as well. Believe me, I didn't had the time to innovate in the first 6 months because I was so caught up in the mess that was like present when it comes to LC's financial performance. And on the other hand, I had to manage MC financial situation, financial routines as well. So when I know that there is one board that will help me out in terms of implementation of routines, now I can focus on developing routines, on strategizing. And this is how we were able to develop a one whole finance document, which is specifically mentioning all the routines of all aspects of finance that we have legislated inside our network. And it is responsibility of EFB and the MC to make sure that all those routines are being followed by the LCs. So next. And this is a picture of me before the existence of EFB. I swear this was my routine every month. This was my situation when I was going to sleep. I was almost a skeleton. And when EFB was created, my life became very easy. Now I can rely on people who can actually help me in implementing standards, and I can enjoy my MC work as well. I can innovate as well, and I can pay extra attention or additional attention to LCs as well, apart from managing their basic issues or routine issues. So thank you so much, people, for listening to me. And I would encourage everyone to apply for Entity Finance Board pilot program, because it is going to be a lot of, like it has a lot of benefits for you, because like every entity has their own specific problems. And sometimes as an MCVP, it becomes very difficult for us to resolve those issues. Sometimes we need external help as well, in form of a board, in form of some kind of team or a finance subcommittee. So Entity Finance Board would be very beneficial in that case. And surely then you would get time to actually improve your processes as well, and to build upon something and move forward towards innovation and making your entity more sustainable. So thank you, everyone. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rai and Julia, for sharing your experiences handle EFB. As they mentioned, there is a lot of benefits, but also you need to be committed to this project, because as MCVP Finance, you handle the finance direction inside your entity. So if you are considering to apply, just to align that this first semester will require a lot of your effort and commitment, implementing the EFB, being accountable with them, tracking if they're implementing the processes, support them to understand different situations or contexts, or the way that you work the financial routine. And well, the next part is basically to share with you the timeline of the selection process. So we launched the application on May 26, basically during the MCVP Finance Summit. The deadline is on June 9, so you still have some days to apply. And then the final results will be on June 15. Basically, we have a kind of week, because we are focused on planning, etc. But there is the dates that you need to take in consideration. Yeah. And then some suggestions before apply. Please, I highly recommend to check the EFB Summit output. There is a link. This is the summit that we delivered a few months ago on April, last month, on April, for the global network of EFBs and finance responsibles. We share a lot of content related to EFB implementation as part of the routine. Also, I highly recommend to analyze and discuss with your MC about the EFB implementation, the benefits, the situation, also check your talent capacity, how feasible it's for you to have the people elect. If you check the link, the application form, there is some dates that we align with you about the checkpoints that you will need to have the EFB chair selected, the team selected and planning done, etc. So also consider if you have the talent capacity to run the piloting project, etc. Analyze your context and which are your priorities for finance in the 2021-22 term. Take in consideration how the EFB implementation could affect your strategies. That means how your plans could be changed. Consider the EFB implementation. Visualize your strategies or your routine without EFB and with EFB, so then you can have a better scenarios of the EFB implementation. And then basically the next part is the Q&A. So I share with you a link, but also let me check the chat in case you have questions. Okay, so let me check the comments on the chat. Okay, LCs are accountable for EFB or MCs. Basically, are both. Depends of your focuses. If you are implementing audits or data collections, the LCs needs to be accountable to EFB in terms of share the financial data, share the resources related to audits. In terms of management or network management itself, the LC is still accountable to MC. So the MC, they need to attend, I don't know, one-to-ones, LCP's calls, the onboarding or educational content provided by the MC, strategical bodies. There is the situations related to accountability. they export the data, fill the EFB service. No, as I mentioned it, MCs are still responsible for the GFB service. So you can have the synergy with EFB to collect the data, but MCVP Finance, it's still the responsible to fill the submission sheets and send the survey, not EFB. You can have support to consolidate the LC's data from EFB, but the survey it's still responsibility from MCs. The EFB share term, it's for 6 months or 12 months. It could be, depending your context, most of the entities are handled 6 months terms, but if you have the talent capacity to run an MC term or 12 months team or chair, could be feasible. Also, we have during this piloting 2 entities or 1 entity. Yeah, AIESEC in Kenya have a 12 months term. So this is something that you can take in consideration. Oh, I suggest usually ask respond some questions. But yeah, right now, if you can have a 12 months term, it's I think it's better. Okay, so usually answer some questions in the chat. Do entities have already part of the piloting need to apply again? No. For example, you, Sri Lanka, you need to apply again because you are considered part of the pilot right now. So basically, we will assess your implementation. And if you want to continue as part of the piloting, you only need to get focused on the selection process for the next team if you need it. LCVPs and LCVP finance can be EFB shares. Right now, yes. For EFB share, we prefer to don't have the share position because they will be responsible of data collection or audits and these kind of things. So if the share of the people related with these responsibilities are right now part of the LCs, maybe you will have some issues or some controversies related with transparency or impartial, having impartially assessments. So you can, but I recommend to have EFB chair at least at with not share positions. Okay, the EFB chair got selected by who? For the entities that are implementing EFB by first, there is a selection subcommittee that when we've passed for the selection process, I align with more detail, but we have a selection subcommittee. There is for new entities, there is the MCVP finance and GFB board representative, and could be a national finance guest. For example, could be your finance manager or an NST or your finance subcommittee chair, these kind of things. But for the selection subcommittee, there needs to be an MC and GFB representation. The MCVP finance is responsible to run or make sure the implementation is running well in terms of the timeline, framework, etc. But the final decision, it's between these bodies. Okay. So I saw some of the questions was answered by Jocelyn. Can the FCP Finance be the chair? I highly don't recommend that because there is not the proper purpose of EFB. The EFB purpose is to have a separation between strategies and technical side. So if you are the MCP Finance for next term and also the EFB chair, basically it's the same that you handle everything without EFB. So if you are planning to handle EFE, I highly recommend to consider to have the chair because this is the idea of the things. I'll try to speak, Jocelyn. I can hear you if you are talking. No, usually I can't hear you. Try to rejoin to the Zoom, maybe. Okay, thank you. We have another question. Who will be responsible for educating the selected EFE? Well, as GFE, we'll done scaling a general academy related with the things to EFE, like the processes, the job descriptions, responsibilities as part of the general EFE. If you have a specific processes, I don't know about how to collect the data, or if you are implementing accounting software, this kind of things. This kind of onboarding depends on you, but the general things related to EFE, it's a responsibility of GFB. Okay, EFE directly connected with GFE or only MC? Can you explain me more your question?
I mean, EFB, while they will be working, they will be reporting to the GFB or to the MC?
Both. With MC, it's more the results of the implementation of the activities, responsibilities, and tasks. And with GFE, it's more related with the project implementation. So we'll have accountability systems between GFE and EFBs to check that the EFBs are implementing the project. And in terms of maybe for the routines or the tasks, it's more directly with you. Okay. If an entity have applied and do not get selected into the pilot project, it can proceed to implementation. Okay. Nizar, can you explain me more your question? I can't hear you. But well, I think maybe the reasons that an entity could not be selected, I think it's more related to HR right now. In case we see that you don't have the talent capacity to handle the situation or these kind of things. There is entities that are implementing kind of similar bodies in parallel. There is not the idea to have separately situations. So I think we need to analyze better your context of if you already have an EFB, maybe your progress or your situation right now. But yeah, I think it's more related to understand your context to have a better answer of your question. Yeah, thank you, Jocelyn, because we'll institutionalize the body. I don't know if you have more questions. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, I think some of the things that you can, or the example that you can visualize better the implementation of EFB, it's basically that how ECBs and ICB work together. Yeah, that's worry, Jocelyn. So if you are implementing EFB without considering or out of the EFB GFB project, it's kind of the same logic, no? Having ECB, but without ICB support. You can, but I think it's not the ideal, and maybe your entity will lose a lot of content or interaction with the rest of the global network, etc. So I think also there is a good benefit, very good benefits of being part of the project. Okay, EFE connects to GFB in general guidance. We need the MCP finance to track this. Since you know what are you lacking. Okay, BAU is it's business as usual. You can Google it. Basically, business as usual means your routine. Basically, for example, the business as usual of an NCP finance, it's the synergy calls with operations, the weekly MC meeting, I don't know, those activities that you, yes, business as usual, that means BAU. Basically, this is all the things that you do as part of your routine inside your role. Yeah. Great. So in case you have more questions, I will share with you a spreadsheet. So also I will share that again on the MCP Finance Telegram, in case there is similar questions that you can put them on the spreadsheet. And yeah, I think that's it from our side. So thank you so much for attending this consultancy space. And well, in case of you still have questions, you can use the channels, the spreadsheet, or ask to me or Jocelyn. And don't forget the dates. June 9 is the deadline to apply. So you still have around a week and a half to check and review your context, ask all the questions that you needed, review with your MC, analyze the different scenarios, and don't miss to apply. Thank you so much for attending this consultancy space.